Okay, well, what we have here is Simba's hind leg, the mold for it. We're about ready to make a wax. And what we do is make sure that the mold is seated in place. Otherwise, we're going to end up with a warped leg. We'll put these two halves together. We're going to do the same thing with this front paw. Put these halves together, make sure they're seated. Then take these pieces of inner tube and wrap these things like this. Want to make sure we get it tight enough so that wax doesn't come pouring out of the mold and ending up on my foot, which has happened in the past. Now we're going to use wax that's approximately 280 degrees, and we're going to go ahead and pour this in carefully, trying not to create a lot of turbulence. So that we don't get a lot of bubbles on the surface. And then we're going to go ahead and slosh it around so it hits all the surfaces. We have gotten all our surfaces there. We'll do the same thing again here with this front paw. One thing about making a wax is you can count on making a mess. And I don't think a good wax could be made without making a mess. And what we're going to do then is back up that coat with 180 degree wax. We have to wait for it to be just the right temperature, the mold and the wax in here. If it's too cold, it's going to delaminate and it's going to have air pockets. If it's too hot, it's just going to wash off. But we have to keep building up layers until we get it to a certain thickness, the thickness that we want our bronze to be. We'll do the same thing with this. The first two coats are the most critical. That's what's going to give us the best surface. And after that, it's just a lot of backup coats. Probably 4 more coats after this of cooler wax. Anyway, we can actually move to some things that are already made this morning. We've got some waxes here that would be the same ones as what we're doing over there, just this is the other front paw. We'll take the mold apart and remove the wax. So here's the result. And this has to be the right thickness, which, as I'm looking at the light inside, it looks like it is the right thickness, so that one we can use. The opposite hind leg of the one we're doing over there. This one is the right thickness too, so we got another winner. And now we've got Simba's head. We want to be careful because this is cold right now. We want to be careful we don't break off his ear. Of course, if we do, then we just wax weld it back on. It just ends up taking more time. So anyway, it looks like we're going to successfully pull this guy out. And I think we've got another winner here. And these waxes, when they come out of the mold, they never come out perfect. There's always extra work that needs to be done on them. So what I'm going to do is take it over to the wax bench right now and do some wax touch-up, which is to take the seam line out and fix bubbles and any imperfections that could be in here. First thing I want to do is inspect the wax to make sure that it's even worth doing the touch-up on. Sometimes if, let's just say, there was an area that's caved in that or just a really bad spot, you just have to weigh the advantage of remaking it might be better. But this one, the whole thing looks good. Seam line is almost invisible, except if once it's in bronze, it would really, really show up. You can't see it that well in wax right now, but if I did nothing with this seam line, it would just jump out at you in the bronze. So then that would be the chaser's problem. They would have to, they'd have to fix it. We don't want to do that to them. We're going to go ahead and take some soft wax and smear it over where the seam line is. We want to be very careful to maintain what the artist has originally done. keep his textures and his form. Everything about what he's done is what's important here. So as I'm subtracting and adding wax, I just have to make sure that in the end, when the artist would look at it, he'd say, that's my work. And we don't want it to be my work. We want it to be his. I can't believe how good this seam line is. Sometimes the seam line can shift and you get a ridge, which is a little harder to deal with, but in the end we can deal with that and still make it look what it's supposed to look like. When Ken will look at this, he should not see anything that bothers him about what I've done. Of course, there's always another opportunity to fix things in the metal, but you can see that wax is a lot easier to work with than the metal would be. So whatever I can do here is going to be much help to anybody downline from me. And the chasers will have plenty to do anyway. There's always a lot of work that they have to accomplish. I'm certainly always amazed at what the chasers can do. Wax is a real easy material to work with. I think some chasers, because they work in metal so much, they realize that for them, working in metal is easier than wax, but I don't know, for me, wax is definitely a lot easier. If I have to add wax or subtract it, it's an easy process. If they have to add metal, they will have to, they'll have to weld it up and then grind it back down again. There's a little pit there that I'm going to go ahead and fill with this soft wax. And then by the time I'm done, I'll go over the whole thing again. I'll just pick it up and look at it and make sure that that there's nothing about this that will bother me. So this is just kind of the first run. Also, we'll use different tools. I see a little flaw right there and here. So I use a dental tool, or I can even use more delicate dental tools if in areas that need a little more finesse. Getting closer to the eye here. I see a tiny pit in the eye, and that's where I use a much more delicate instrument to build that up. I'll come back later when it cools and sculpt that in even a little better. I also need to cut this pour spout off. Well, we're getting a lot closer to being done with Simba's head, and even though I'll spend a little bit more time on it and just make sure that every little thing is done as well as I can on this, That's pretty much it.